Happy holidays, everyone. And let's see. I think you have the most episodes on No BS Wealth, and you've been on every season of 12 Days of Giving, Ashley. So uh, kudos, and everyone knows who
Yes.
you are, so we don't have to go through that whole intro. But today's conversation hits home for a lot of people, and I know our kids quite aren't to that age, but it's something that you always think about and kind of worry about, especially with today's kids and generations. They lack critical thinking. They lack ability to go get. It's just interesting, and I really wanted to get that from your perspective and stories that you have and experiences that you have with parents that are going through with these kids that are in late high school, college, that just aren't starting. They're not getting going, and they're not figuring it out. And what that does to us as parents, but also how can we help them get that way? So welcome back, and without further ado, let's jump into what that looks like.
Yeah, thanks for having me back. Always happy to come and talk here with you. Um, so I to reiterate just what you said, like this is such a common struggle right now. So I think first and foremost, like let's just normalize that that is a struggle and it's hard. And for those of you that are listening and I know we haven't gotten too deep into, maybe story wise here, but if you're a parent with older teens, late high school, like college, and you're just kind of struggling in that space of like, how am I going to prepare them to launch? Like, so they're making financial, like responsible, like financial decisions, or not even responsible financial decisions, like just responsible decisions in general. Like you are not alone. And, more people, I don't think a lot of parents talk about it outwardly because there can be a sense of like guilt or shame around that. Like, what did I do wrong? Have I messed up? Is this a reflection on me? So, I think before we just get into things, I want to normalize just how this is a struggle and it's okay. And my hope is that maybe through, some of the story and answering some of your question that we can just talk about like how to help here. So I want to introduce you to Mike and Michelle. Mike and Michelle are in their late 40s, and they have two kids, two girls actually. And one of the girls is the oldest one, typical what we might think of as like oldest daughter, oldest child, like self motivator, responsible in terms of like decision making, ambitious, has generally done well with, academics, things like that. Things that you kind of, if you're into like sibling position, like the things that you would think about in terms of like an oldest child. And so their oldest daughter, Sydney, she is early in college. And, Mike and Michelle, like working with them, kind of explained like they didn't really need to worry about Sydney. Like Sydney just kind of did like all the things that like you're supposed to do, right? It was like this is like the quote unquote easy child.
Yeah.
And there wasn't a lot of intentional effort put into parenting, into developing those critical thinking skills, as kind of you mentioned, right? Because like old Sid, she had a lot of that like naturally. So, Sydney's in like her like kind of early college age. They're not quite 20 years old, but early college age. And then they have their youngest daughter, Sarah, who's a junior in high school. And Sarah is what we might think of as a typical youngest child. um, Sarah, bless her heart. Bless her heart. I feel like, listen, for those of you from the South, like you probably already know what I mean when I say that. Like, oh, bless her heart. Sarah, she's a great girl all around. But like her motivation level for learning, doing, achieving is like it's not on like Sydney level. And she's just kind of content, like just kind of good. Like, doesn't really have a desire to like move the needle like on things or to be better than like where kind of she is. Like status quo is like her jam. And so Mike and Michelle have two very different children here. And neither of them are like quote bad or quote wrong. They're just different. When it comes to the financial side though, and supporting them and developing some of those skills, Sydney has historically, they did some of the things like setting both the girls up with like a bank account, a checking account, like having, a debit card, like for them. Um, they expressed how they tried to teach financial responsibility and encouraging them to get jobs. Shockingly, Sydney like had like a summer job. Like, she just needed to be reminded. And then she went out and like kind of got that summer job and would work and, put her money in her account. And was, didn't uh did not gripe and complain around having to contribute to pay for, her gas money, like around that. Sarah, on the other hand, old girl, like, you know, are you going to get a job this summer? Maybe. I don't know. Like, it's kind of hard to find a job. There's a lot of resistance, is the word that I would use. Just resistance. And, Mike and Michelle, because things were so, quote, easy, like with Sydney, I felt really stuck in how do I help develop Sarah? How do I parent her? How do I help, like, with her getting a job? Like, that's so foundational for teens to like learn from a work ethic standpoint, but also financial responsibility. And they didn't really have that struggle with Sydney. Giving Sarah, like setting her up with a checking account and like a card, like hoping if we put money into it, that will motivate her, nope. Like they were getting overdraft notices. Like, Sarah was out there like swiping and tapping. Like, she's not paying attention to anything. Right. And there was this friction that started to like be created. And also, Mike and Michelle alluded to a little bit of resentment, like frustration and resentment. Like, while they never outwardly said this, they expressed like, why can't she be more like Sydney? Like, why is this so difficult for her? Why doesn't she just get it? She has an older sister who has quote unquote paved the way and shown like, hey, this is how you know, should kind of like do things. Like there's a model right there. And Mike and Michelle, both dual income professionals, generally like financially like responsible people, middle class, suburban, white family, great neighborhood, great schools. Like both girls had like great friends, like family influences, like all of these things when we start thinking about like our micro and macro systems, right? Like there was a lot of like good things like there from a support standpoint, from a support and influence standpoint. But Mike and Michelle just like so lost though. And like, they never said this, but it was like, how the heck did Sarah turn out the way that she did? Like, we have all these good things. And for both of them, particularly Michelle, I think there was a lot of shame around what did I do wrong? Like, I have missed the mark here from a parenting standpoint. So I'm setting just kind of this stage, like with like this story. And I want to pause because I know I've gone kind of into like a lot of just context here. Mike and Michelle's story, while it is their story, like it's also story that I've heard a lot, right? A lot about is how do we parent two different children? One is more maybe responsible, the other is less less so. Bless their heart. So this is who kind of this family is, and this is who this couple is. But I want to pause to kind of give you some room to like digest and see where would be helpful do you think that we should go kind of in thinking about this family, this couple.
Yeah, and I think about my own kids because yeah, they might be young, 11 and 8, but there is that older, younger. I mean, it's there. It's just a thing, right? And everyone goes through this. I have a client who they're actually twin daughters, but even by the few seconds the one came out first, like it's still there too, right? And their path as adults is could not be polar opposite. And as I was listening to this and digesting it and laughing my ass off because our youngest is, oh man, we'll bring him on and have a lot more issues with that down the road. But it came down to, as parents, there isn't one way to parent. There are multiple ways to parent, even if you've done everything like set up wise. Like you had said, like this family's basically set up and there is no failure because everything is good, right? It's check mark, check mark, check mark, and doesn't have those bad influences. And we still see this separation between siblings and whatnot. What I wanted to ask and why you're going through this is not like why, because I'm not getting into all of that. I don't know if we have the brain power to know why the oldest and the youngest operate this way, but where can we go with the youngest, right? Where can we go
Mm-hmm.
with the young child who does develop differently, who does have a different attitude about life? How can we really achieve to get them to jump off without like trying to parent the way we did, right? Like we
Yep.
can't do things. Those second kids don't have that mechanism in there.
No.
What do we start with parents to do that?
Well, we should just send them off to a different planet for a little while and yeah,
Okay.
right. Yeah. No.
Hopefully,
I think I'm
maybe.
kind of I think I'm kind of joking. I think I'm kind of joking about that. So look, the first place really that I encourage parents to start with is actually around the difference between equal and equitable. Like what is equal and what is equitable? And so what do I mean by that? Equal means the exact same. So in terms of like providing opportunity or support, like financially, like what have you, or time, like investment, like we're like, I think sometimes parents get caught when it comes to, they have like multiple kids that I have to give exactly the same. It has to be equal. So if I give, Sydney $50 for gas a month, I have to give Sarah $50 in gas a month. And like in some ways it's not bad. It's not wrong. And I think that we can, set some things up that way. So, but in terms of helping, Sarah, there are going to be some things that are not equal. Like there are going to be some things where it is more equitable, thinking about fairness, right? Like taking into consideration each child's needs, given knowing that each child is different. Like, okay, Sydney does not need as much guidance, reminder, accountability, like, maybe even not as much financial support, right? Sarah, on the other hand, in order to get her to where we quote unquote want to be, is gonna need more. And that is not equal, but it is equitable. So first, I think that is it's a trap that parents get caught in when it comes to their kids and parenting and offering support, is they think that it has to be the exact same, and it is not. It can't be. But that's also where frustration then develops, is because like I'm giving one this and I'm giving the other this. And so it's like, hey, let's like scratch that. Totally fine if like your boundary is, hey, I'm going to give each of you $50 a month for gas. Like that might be where you decide things are equal. But then there might be some other things like helping them fill out a job application, like sitting down with them, breaking it down. So I find that for kids that are similar to Sarah, I find that there could be a lot of factors. Like you said, we're not going to get into the why. But the thing that we have to, as parents, remember is that, there could be some other things at play that we may not be aware of. What might just look like a lazy kid who is not as like motivated could be a kid who is very overwhelmed by something like going and getting a job. That might sound super easy. Just fill out the applications. Like go around, figure out where do you want to work, go in, ask for an application, fill it out, turn it in. That sounds incredibly easy. But if your child is struggling with doing something like that, then taking the time to sit down, create a plan together, and break it down into micro steps. Like, okay, if our job and objective is to get a job, well, then what are all of the steps involved in getting a job? And then how can we break that down, and maybe plan it out like on a calendar? Like this weekend, like we're going to drive around to 10 places. But before that, you have to make a list of 10 places. So you make your list of 10 places. And then this weekend, we are going to drive around together. What's interesting about like teens and even young adults is that there's this push pull dynamic. It's like, I love you, I hate you. like, I want you to help me. No, get away from me. Don't help me. But if we notice that our kids are struggling with something, I think it's important to say, hey, like, this seems to be a struggle. And, would it be okay if I kind of offered some support and kind of stepped in and helped? Like, you don't have to do it alone. And it's hard because I think as parents, and I'm thinking about my own kids, Cam just turned 13. So, like, holy cow, I have a teenager now. So some of this feels like really like, ooh, kind of big for me. But, I think that we think because they're 17, 18, 19, 20, that they should just be able to do like all the things alone by themselves. And we are not meant to do or be like in isolation or do things alone. And I think that realizing, hey, if our kid is struggling with something, it's okay to do some things with them. Like they might learn a lot from you, there. So, okay, recapping, like for kids that are like Sarah, like if they're struggling to kind of do things, like break it down into some micro steps, like lay out all of the plans, or all the steps. Why that's important is because you talked about that critical thinking. It helps them think through critically, what are all the things that I need to do? And you can collaborate on that. Give them a sense of autonomy. Like, where do you want to start? Instead of just dictating, like, this is where you need to start. Like, ask them, like, where do you think, now that this is our plan, where do you think this is the best place to start? Cool. Okay. Like, make a list, and then I will help drive you around to all of these places so that, we can chip away, at kind of this goal. So I think, that is really important. And the other piece too is, as I just said, is being okay with and accepting that you're going to have to step in and do some things with them, and that's okay. And it can actually be a really great bonding moment, and it can help them to not feel so alone in having to do it.
One of the biggest fights that now we've established, like, hey, this is what we can do to help Sarah or our Sarahs out there in the world. The part that I think we should talk about before we end this whole thing is us as parents. We're fighting, our generation anyways, that's probably having kids around this age. We're fighting something that we were left alone to go do those things, right? We were said, kicked out the house, come back when the streetlights are on, go get a job, you need to make money, and there was no help. And I think that's what we fight a lot is we want them to be kind of like us, but we don't want them to be like us. So we're
Yeah.
harder on them. We're pushing them to go be independent when realistically, like you said, 17, 18, 19, 20-year olds really aren't mature enough to be an adult that shouldn't be on their own. Um, and so how do we as parents and as the adults, what do we need to work on to like remove that, right? Remove that from ourselves if we can, or at least temper it, but also set our sights on each of our kids has a different destination and ending, right? It is not they're all out by 18 and they're going to college, and you know what I mean? Like, how can we also forgive ourselves for not hitting those marks, right? And be able to adjust to what our kids' needs are.
We probably need another hour for that. Part two. So okay, a few things come to mind here. For me, one, like hearing you say that reminded me of, yeah, I think there are elements, for those like that are millennials, raising like, kind of kids, older millennials, like we don't want our kids to fail, but we also recognize that there are things likely maybe from how we grew up that maybe we should not have carried like the burdens from or responsibility for, and that's okay. But I also think that what I notice a lot is parents are afraid to let their kids fail. And in doing so, they jump in sometimes too quickly. Um, or they had previously been doing a lot of things, quote unquote, for them. And then they hit these teenage years and it's like, well, gosh, you're 16, 17, 18. Like, you should know how to do this by now. And now I'm just going to pull back all support and you're totally like by yourself on your own. Or you're off to college now. Like, see you later. Like, I'm done. And that is really not helpful or wise. And so, if you have younger kids, I would say right now, and you're listening, one, good for you. But two, like learning kind of slowly along the way, like, where am I okay? Like letting my kid, I say fail, but like make a mistake. So one example is that our kids have been making their lunches since they were in kindergarten.
Wow.
Now there has been some assistance and support. And we've structured things kind of as they've gotten older, just kind of, a little bit differently. But, from a responsibility piece, it's, you know, you make your own lunch. You're responsible for that. Um, Cam forgot his lunch one day and it was sitting on the counter. And I had to struggle with not taking it up there. Now, granted, he was like, fifth grade. So we're talking like 10, right? 10, 11. And so I struggled with like, do I just run this really quickly up to school in between my calls? Or do I let him sit with and, remember that he forgot his lunch? Now he can buy his lunch from school. There's always money on the kids' accounts where they
I'm gonna
can
let 'em start.
purchase. Yeah, where they're not going to starve, right? But I had to struggle with that. Like, and he came home and was like, oh, I forgot my lunch. And I was like, I know, dude. It was like sitting here on the counter, like all day, man. Like, ooh, yeah. What was that like? Oh, it was so embarrassing. Like, because I went and like sat down, and then I had to read, and then, and it was a learning opportunity. But, my point in sharing that is I think sometimes as parents, we're scared to like let our kids like make mistakes or we jump in too quickly. And that's not helpful in building those critical thinking skills. And then by the time they get to be young adults or teenagers, like we expect them to have it when they haven't been learning it all along. Now, if you're a parent hearing this and you're like, oh crap, like, I was the one that went and like brought my kid their lunch every single time they forgot it or their homework. Hey, that's okay. That's okay. But we can start now at developing some of those critical thinking skills. And so, where are you okay with allowing your child to make mistakes? That has to be a personal decision. I don't know where exactly that is like for you, but there is learning in that place. And that's how, from like a brain, like, if we think about like our executive functioning, like that's how that develops there. And so, it's a hard space to be in, but it, it is useful and helpful in letting our kids struggle a little bit.
Without a doubt. And I know we'll tease this because we have many episodes we probably already teased, but that also goes into youth sports, which will be a topic we bring up next year. Don't worry.
Oh, I'm here for it.
Oh yeah, and that might be a long one, fellow ladies and gents. That might be 2-3 hours of us ranting and raving. But as we wrap up this one for this holiday season, is we know you're thinking about it. We all are, right? Especially those that have the older children that are coming closer to college. Like this is the time that you reflect, you think about it, you think about your money, you're just thinking about it. And while you're thinking about it, listening to this episode, understand that there are things you can do now, and as well as things that you're going to need to do down the line that probably are different than what you're used to. They're probably different the way your brain thinks to do them. And the ultimate thing of what you said this whole thing is it's okay because it's the normal. It's the norm. Everyone's going through it. Everyone's talking about it. Just be able to make that adjustment. So from my perspective, that's what I took out the most is it's normal and you're just going to have to plan and work through it because it's your kid. You just got to figure it out as you go.
Yeah, all of that. You said it well. Look, I'm out. Like mic drop. I don't have anything else to add. Like
Awesome.
there, like you said it all, man. Yeah.
Well, as the holidays are here, go ahead, check out all the resources. Obviously, Ashley Quamme is amazing. She's on there. Go to the website, check everything out. Reach out to us if you really have questions or want help. We're here for that, right? And as we know. Ashley's going to be on episode 2 of the new year, so make sure you check that out as it comes down, as well as all the other episodes that she's in. It'll be in the description as well. Ashley, I appreciate you every time we meet. Thank you.